Probably playing baseball. I spend most of my time at a baseball park at one sort, the old Hammond Park, which is now a playground, and walking uptown. There wasn't a whole bunch to do in those days. It was a quiet community, and basically it still is. Well, I never played personally on Larry Walker Field, and I'm pretty proud of it to be named that, to be honest with you. That was the old Wooler Farm. I played on Hammond Stadium, which is the adjacent park to it, which they're now remodeling. I spent my time playing baseball there, other than the first few years, which was at the old Hammond Park. But I did spend a lot of my time at the Hammond Park. It used to be called Hammond Stadium, and then it was called Boyer Stadium, and now it's called Hammond Stadium again. Well, my dad was a baseball player. I grew up watching him play at the old park, and I was probably I was either in school or at the ballpark, one of the two. That was my life basically, and he made sure that I played ball, and I loved playing it. So we even built a little pitching mound home plate outside of my uncle's place, right next door to my house, and we spent all our after school time out there throwing the ball to each other, and so it was basically it was a lot of our time. I was basically played as a pitcher. I did play some first base and some outfield, and locally I played all three positions. I did play a wee bit of professional ball, and I was as a pitcher during that time, which was not to my liking so much, so I gave that up and came home rather quickly. Again, didn't make my father too happy. The Haney and Hammond was a big rivalry, and Pete Toloski here in Haney, Teddy Boyer in Hammond. They were the main combatants, although the senior team at that time, I wasn't really a regular on that team when they had basically all that rivalry. I did play senior ball when I was 14, but I played my junior ball there, and the rivalry was just a year or two before me, and when I became a regular, the Hammond team sort of folded, and I went to what they call the Maple Ridge Hotel team, which is a combination of both. I don't remember too many offensive things. I guess I hit a few home runs in my life. I've been told, Freddie Willard tells me he caught one in his farm about way past beyond the fence, that he kept the ball, and I remember Swede Williamson came over to get the ball from him. He said, I didn't have the ball, and Swede says, I know you got it, you little so-and-so. He says, you got to give it back, and so anyway, he hid the ball in his house. But probably my biggest memory was a junior playing defensive. We played against the Haney team, and a good buddy of mine, Bill Mahan, who I have coffee with every week here, he hit a ball that was way out by center field, and I ran back on it, and I caught it going over, straight back from a plate, over my shoulder, and to this day I keep reminding him of that catch. Yeah, I think basically baseball is a thing where they say you have to have 50% ability, the other 50% you learn. I guess I had the 50% ability, and I did learn some, although I never really did, it's like my son Larry, I never really did have a problem hitting the ball, and I just see the ball and try to hit it, and I was fortunate the pitcher had good control, hit my bat quite often. I don't know what my averages were. The only one I can probably remember is playing one summer up in Powell River as a worker up there and playing for that team, and I think I hit about 340 or 350 up there. The team was the national champion in 1924. The only person I knew from that ball team was Norm Goodall, who actually left a few mementos, a bat and a ball bag and a couple balls. I have a ball at home in my trophy case that's been signed by that team. And that was the Hammond Cedar 1924 champions, and they recruited a lot of players for that team.
The baseball park, which was the focal point for the entire Hammond community, was right in the middle of Hammond, on Worsley, and I lived on Stanton Street and Lorne Road on one side. So it's full of grass and trees now, but it was the baseball park with a big bleacher set up. The Hammond, the junior boys and the seniors. I think the seniors initially were probably Canadian baseball champs at one time, because the Hammond Mill were pretty active, and they recruited people from all over if they were good ball players, and they got a job in the dirty 30s, and so they come to Hammond. So the baseball team was a big deal. Lots of competition between Hammond and Haney and Pitt Meadows and so on, juniors and seniors.
And of course there were the inevitable ball games. You had to go to the ball games. I mean, like once ball season started, you were at the ballpark. So you went home, did your afternoon chores, and beat it down to the ballpark while it was still light to watch, and you knew the parents of, or you knew that the people you were watching were the parents of a lot of your friends from school.
Like Larry Walker Jr., Larry Walker Sr., he was junior when I met him. Seen him play his first ball game as a senior, monstrous talent. A little bit of trivia for people that might not, everybody knows about Larry Walker Jr., but Larry Walker Sr. is probably the only guy that ever batted in excess of 400 in 4 consecutive decades. So it was Lauren Road, where we did it as part of when we built the Hammond Community Center. It was a neighborhood improvement project. And it's the park where Larry Walker Sr. played ball. The hall was right across the street from it, where that apartment or condo complex is now. And when they, before they had, some years before that, they had, the Community Association assembled the funds and bought the property where Hammond Stadium is now. And that was important to me about when they're going to redo the park, that it's going to be a baseball place. Baseball built it. It should stay that way. If you go where the home plate had been, and you went to the far corner of what was center field for a long time, I think it was 432 feet. It was the same dimensions as where the Cleveland Indians play. Larry Walker Sr. probably didn't tell you this, but he hit a ball over that center field fence. It cleared the top of that fence by 25 or 30 feet. If it had been 500 feet, it would have went over that thing. It was marvelous that those things are going to continue to be enshrined in people's memories or through this kind of a process. Well, the mill, I think it's on rec. There's more information on that in our, like, I'm not quite that old. They run a provincial or national championship, the mill baseball team, and all they had to do was show up. I think they were all assigned to the boiler room or something. They come in and punch the clock and then went and played baseball. And lots of industrial things that were done, teams were done that way in those days. And they played out of, at one time, I believe, it started at the golf course. I think there used to be a ballpark in that golf course. And when they got the Lauren Road Park, and I'm not positive about this, but I think it was the Hammond brothers that donated that money, donated that park on Lauren Road. Then the old Hammond Hall was directly across from home plate on what I think is 205th Street. That's closed up now. Well, again, that same Larry Walker Sr., he hit a home run right over the top of that hall. Like, that's a city block, and it's 50 feet up in the air, and it was still going. That used to have real nice stands. It was a beautiful place to go and watch a ball game, but it was just a little tiny bit too small for a regulation thing. But the competition between Haney and Hammond for the baseball, it was like, hockey analogy, it would be like between the Boston Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens. Like, it was great baseball, and there was no AAA ball then, I don't think. So, like, you got a lot of Bob Stinson from Haney Builders was, you wouldn't know if he's 80-odd years old now, but man, he played some serious baseball. Mind, he played for the wrong team. He played for Haney. But Larry Walker and Kenny Watts, that was here, I think, played for a lot of people. The Lambrights had a couple of people on that team, and it was fun to go. And it was like a Norman Rockwell experience. You had dogs and kids, and the sun and the baseball game, and screaming at the umpire and stuff like that. It was a very vibrant part, and it was right in the community. It wasn't somewhere out of town. It was right there. You couldn't escape it.
Well, I played in I was allowed to play in the boys' team with the boys, and I played first base, or maybe it was second base, because I was tall and I could catch the fly balls going by. I spent a lot of time playing ball.
I remember going and sitting in the bleachers and watching some of the games, but to me, I think the library was more of a pull than than the baseball fields.
I was with the junior team there for I think it was 3 years. And then that's another thing. We had an awful big playoff with Haney for the junior Fraser Valley Juniors, and it ended up in a big argument at the end of the ball game. We won, and we had to go back and play again, and they kicked our pants the next time out. But yes, they had a junior A team that I had the opportunity to play 1 year on. George Kellis. I wish George would have been here because he was he played third base with a senior team with Roy Hytanen and I think Rivsy Boy was there with a team, Cliffy Rock. That was as a senior team. They were young guys. They were pretty young guys. And of course we had Moose Walker, Larry, the old goal fella, and he was a star of the baseball field. He was well liked. Then as we got too older and it started to kind of collapse, Port Coquitlam and Hammond put one together, and Haney, and they very solid baseball team, a good solid ball team. Kenny Jorgensen and Gary and they had like Donnie Davis and Joey White until they went to Millardville. But of course, we had a great team. I wish I could put them all together as they could see them, but I'm trying to remember all of them if I can't. Boom Chain from Pitt Meadows, our pitcher. He was a knuckleballer. Boom Chain, and that was Roy. Oh gosh, darn it! Now I'm going to get bad because I forget. Roy Lehman, and they called him Boom Chain. He ran I think he worked on the boom at the mill. I can remember the greatest game that he played for us as I was sort of the looked after their money and all that stuff, and a beer for the boys at the end of the game. We had to have that. We had to have that. Yes, Larry pitched the game against the Bellingham Bells. We had a doubleheader that day. It was Sunday, and it was 140 degrees in Hammond, and we played 5 innings. And for the afternoon, because it was so darn hot, we just said, "We're game over." So they clobbered us anyway. But Larry come back that night and pitched the game. He pitched the best game I ever seen pitched. We beat him 2-0, and it didn't take us any more than an hour and 40 minutes for 9 innings. And that's what the summertime, good long. We had a pretty good twilight there. Yeah, Larry, that was the greatest game. He could play outfield. He could play center field, first base. I know one day he had a catch for us too. But he had to use his first baseman's glove to catch. He told him how hard he could throw it. I don't know. I still think his record of the 100-yard dash is still his in the Fraser Valley. For a big man, he could run very quickly.
In the summertime, I always loved to go to the ball games. That was my favorite thing at the Hammond Ballpark. It was just a couple of blocks from our house, and they had quite a good league going. Like there was teams from Coquitlam and Haney, I think sometimes. Yeah, and Port Moody, yeah. And it was really fun in the summertime to go and watch the fellows play ball. But I went up to the ball games. It was, the first stadium was just, 2 or 3 blocks from our house. I loved to go up and watch especially when they had, like Coquitlam, Ivan was in the league, wasn't it? Yeah, and and they had crowds at the ball games. Like on Sunday, it was packed. The grandstands were absolutely packed, weren't they?
But we used to go down to every baseball game. This was when it was in the southwest corner. You knew about that, okay? And we used to sit and watch that. And once in a while, the balls would hit one of the houses on the other side there. And that's why.
And there was that community thing that it just went unquestioned. Like when they had the old ballpark in Hammond. Well, the mill sponsored a lot of the stuff, and that hung out around there. But then when they started the new ballpark, it was all volunteers, kids, adults, everybody in town. There must have been 100 people out there. Everybody brought their rake. The war folks up the street, they had bring his gravel truck, and I think Kirkpatrick's up here in Haney had an old grater or something they brought down and grated it all off, and then everybody, families, like say, be 100 people across, everybody with a rake and bringing us all up into mounds and stuff. It was, yeah, the community, it was a community thing sort of thing. That was, you know, I don't think you see anywhere today, but more so in Hammond, because everybody.